Elena Morgan grabbed the microphone and pointed music straight at the rusted Mustang in the back of the
Let's
parking
give a
lot.
round of applause to our
The afternoon
facilities
sun
team for
caught
their
the
hard
champagne in her
work.
other
Thank
hand,
you. We're proud to
turning
serve
it
this
gold
community.
against the glass buildings.
Make sure you clean
Music
every step
of Morgan
thoroughly.
Aerospace
We can't have any
Industries.
slip hazards
50
here.
executives and engineers formed a loose semicircle around. Laughter her,
scared.
phones out, already smiling at whatever was about to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the future of transportation. The crowd erupted. Camera flashes lit up the October air. Someone shouted about junkyard chic. Another voice called out asking if the car ran on hopes and prayers. Elena let the laughter build, riding the wave of her own cleverness. This quarterly innovation showcase had become her favorite ritual, a chance to see what toys her people had bought with their bonuses. Teslas lined the premium spots. A BMW i8 gleamed near the entrance. One of the VPs had shown up in a Mercedes EQS that cost more than most people made in 3 years. And then there was the Mustang. Marcus Chen stood 34 feet away with a mop handle still gripped in his callous hands. The gray coveralls hung loose on his frame. 52 years old, but looking closer to 60, shoulders bent from years of work that left marks on a body. He'd been pushing that mop bucket across the lobby floor when the noise from outside pulled him toward the glass doors. 4 years he'd worked here. 4 years of being furniture, of existing in that peculiar space where people looked through you rather than at you. The rust on the Mustang's hood spread like a disease. Passenger door didn't close right, hadn't closed right in a decade. Paint faded to the color of old blood. The kind of car you saw in auto shop parking lots waiting to be parted out, not in the executive lot of a $4 billion aerospace company. Derek Walsh materialized beside Marcus with the particular smile of a man who measured his worth by the fear in other people's eyes. 42 years old, Harvard MBA, VP of Operations. The kind of executive who kept a Tesla and a Porsche because one car couldn't contain his success. Marcus, Elena wants to see something. The request landed like an order because that's what it was. Marcus leaned his mop against the wall and followed Derek through the doors into sunshine that felt too bright, too exposed. The crowd parted. Elena's voice carried across the lot, amplified by speakers someone had set up for maximum effect. "Ah, there he is, our guest of honor." Marcus stopped walking, every face turned toward him. Derek gestured him forward with the impatience of someone who had places to be, deals to close, a life that mattered beyond this parking lot theater. "Come on, don't be shy. We're doing our quarterly innovation showcase. You know the drill. Everyone shows off their new rides. Talks about the future of transportation. I thought, why not include everyone, even our support staff?" Laughter rippled outward from Elena like stones on water. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. 43 years old, and Elena looked 35 with her blonde hair pulled back tight enough to hurt, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than a semester at Stanford. She'd never learned his name in 4 years. Walked past him every morning like he was part of the architecture. Now she wanted him on display. "That is your car, isn't it? The vintage model." More laughter, louder this time. Someone whistled. Marcus stood very still and thought about Diana. Thought about the night she died holding his hand in that hospital room, barely able to whisper, "Don't let them bury it, Marcus. Don't let them win." Thought about the engine hidden beneath that rusted hood, the engine she'd helped him build, the engine that could change everything if he let it. Something shifted inside him then. 4 years of invisibility cracking like old paint. "You want to see if it runs?" The laughter stuttered and stopped. Elena raised an eyebrow, champagne halfway to her lips. Derek's hand landed on Marcus's shoulder with pressure that suggested retreat. "Marcus, maybe you should just..." But Marcus was already walking toward the Mustang. The crowd parted again, this time with confusion replacing amusement. Whispers started up behind him. What's he doing? Is he serious? This should be good. He reached the car and put his hand on the door handle. Metal warm from afternoon sun. Familiar, comforting. The door opened with the squeal of hinges that needed oil. Marcus slid into the driver's seat, and the smell hit him immediately. Old leather and motor oil and something else. Something only he could identify. Diana's perfume. Faint now, almost gone, but still there. Still with him. He put his hands on the steering wheel and closed his eyes. "I'm sorry. I tried to stay invisible, but they won't let me." Then he turned the key. The engine didn't sputter, didn't cough or wheeze or groan, didn't make any of the sounds you'd expect from a 50-year-old car with rust eating its hood. Instead, it sang a deep, smooth, powerful harmonic that rolled across the parking lot like thunder. The sound was unlike anything that Crowd had ever heard, not from a car, not from a plane, not from any machine ever built. Pure, perfect, alive. The laughter stopped. Every single person in that parking lot went silent. Marcus revved the engine once, twice, 3 times. Each time that impossible sound filled the air, vibrating in their chests, making their teeth hum. Elena's champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the asphalt. Marcus killed the engine, stepped out of the car, walked back toward the building without looking at anyone. Elena's voice chased him, all the mockery stripped away. Wait, what was that? What kind of engine? But Marcus was already gone, disappearing through the glass doors, returning to his mop and his bucket in his invisibility. Behind him, the crowd stood frozen, staring at the rusted Mustang like they just witnessed a miracle. Because they just didn't know it yet. Elena couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her penthouse bedroom, 37 floors above San Francisco, staring at the ceiling, listening to that sound replay in her mind. That engine, that impossible engine. She'd been around cars her whole life. Her father had built Morgan Aerospace from a small auto parts manufacturer into a global giant. She'd grown up in garages and factories surrounded by the smell of gasoline and the roar of combustion engines. She knew what machines sounded like. That smooth, perfect, almost musical sound was not something any machine should be able to make. 2 a.m, and she reached for her phone. Derek answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. Elena didn't apologize. "I need you in my office tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I need everything you can find on Marcus Chen. Employment history, background check. I want to know where he came from, where he worked before, what he did before he started pushing a mop around my building." Silence stretched across the line. Then Derek's voice came back sharper, more awake. "Elena, it's 2 a.m. You want me to investigate the janitor? Did you hear that engine today? I mean, yeah, it was different. I guess old car probably has some custom work." Different. Elena sat up in bed, adrenaline burning through her exhaustion. "Derek, I've heard engines from Ferrari, from Lamborghini, from military jets that can break the sound barrier. I've never heard anything like that. Not once, not ever." She could hear Derek breathing on the other end, processing, calculating what this meant for his career trajectory. 6 a.m. Don't be late. She hung up and lay back down, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Chen's face as he walked back into the building. No triumph, no satisfaction, no revenge, just sadness, like a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Derek was waiting in her office at 5:45, which meant he'd probably been there since 5:30 preparing. A thin folder sat on her desk. Elena picked it up and started reading. Coffee growing cold in her other hand. Marcus Chen, 52 years old, born in Boston to an Irish-American working-class family, bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT, master's from Stanford. Elena stopped reading. Her coffee cup made a sharp sound against the desk. Wait, MIT? Stanford. Derek leaned forward in his chair, and for the first time, she saw something in his expression that might have been respect. It gets better. After Stanford, he spent 12 years at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. worked on propulsion systems for deep space missions, published papers, won awards. The guy was a rising star. Elena felt something cold creep up her spine. The kind of cold that came when pieces started fitting together in ways you didn't want them to. Then what the hell is he doing mopping my floors? That's where it gets weird. Derek pointed at the folder. About 15 years ago, he just disappears, leaves NASA, drops off the grid completely. No publications, no patents, no employment records, nothing. Then 4 years ago, he shows up here, applies for a janitor position with a fake resume that lists him as a high school dropout with no work experience. A fake resume. Whoever did his background check didn't dig very deep. Or maybe they just didn't care. Who investigates janitors? Elena stared at the folder. A NASA engineer, a propulsion specialist, hiding in her building for 4 years, mopping floors and emptying trash. The question wasn't just why. The question was what else he was hiding. Derek reached across the desk and handed her a printout. An old news article yellowed at the edges from 15 years of storage in some digital archive. There's one more thing. I found this from right before Chen disappeared from NASA. The headline read, "Aerospace Engineer's Wife Loses Battle with Cancer." Below it, a photograph of Marcus Chen looking younger and thinner, his eyes hollow with grief. He stood beside a woman in a hospital bed. The woman was smiling despite the tubes in her arms, despite the shadows under her eyes that spoke of months of treatment and pain. Her name was Diana Chen. She was also an engineer. She died at 41 years old. Elena read the article 3 times. The couple had been working on something together, some kind of advanced propulsion system. The article mentioned it briefly, called it a revolutionary energy recycling engine, but there was no other information, no patents filed, no follow-up research, like the whole project had just vanished. Elena set down the printout and looked at Derek. I want surveillance footage, every camera in the parking lot. I want to see what he does with that car when no one's watching. Derek hesitated. Elena could see him weighing the request against whatever remained of his ethical boundaries. Do it. The footage arrived at 6 o'clock that evening. Elena locked her office door and watched alone. The first video showed Marcus arriving at work at 5:30 in the morning, parking the Mustang in the far corner of the lot. Same spot every day. Nothing unusual. The second video showed him leaving at 11 p.m., 3 hours after his shift ended. He didn't go straight to his car. Instead, he walked to the trunk, opened it, pulled out a small toolbox. Elena leaned closer to the screen. Marcus popped the hood and started working. The camera angle wasn't great, but she could see him adjusting things, connecting wires, checking gauges on some kind of handheld device. This wasn't casual maintenance. This was engineering. She fast-forwarded through 3 weeks of footage. Same pattern every night. Marcus stayed late, worked on his car for 2 or 3 hours, then drove home. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. He was just the janitor. Then she found it. In one clip from 11 days ago, Marcus disconnected something from the engine. A fuel line, maybe. Elena couldn't tell for certain, but she could see him step back and start the car. The engine ran with no fuel line connected. The engine ran for 10 minutes before Marcus shut it down, reconnected the line, and drove away. Elena paused the video. Her hands were shaking. An engine that runs without fuel. An engine that recycles its own energy. An engine that sounds like nothing else on Earth. My God, what did you build? The next morning, Elena called Marcus into her office. He came in still wearing his gray coveralls, hands rough and calloused from years of work. He stood near the door like he was ready to flee at any moment. Sit down. Marcus didn't move. Elena tried again, softer this time. Please. Slowly, he lowered himself into a chair. Elena studied him for a long moment. He looked tired, worn, like a man who had been running from something for a very long time. I did some research on you. MIT, Stanford, NASA. You were a propulsion engineer, a good one, from what I can tell. Marcus's expression didn't change. That was a long time ago. Not that long, 15 years isn't ancient history, Marcus. You could have worked anywhere. SpaceX would have hired you in a heartbeat. Boeing, Lockheed, hell, you could have started your own company. Why are you here pushing a mop around my building? I needed a job. Elena leaned forward across her desk. You're hiding something. That car of yours? That engine? I've heard a lot of engines in my life. I've never heard anything like that. For the first time, something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Caution. Maybe fear. It's just an old car. Then you won't mind selling it to me. Silence filled the office like water rising. I'll give you $50,000 cash today. More than that car is worth by any measure. It's not for sale. 100,000? No, $200,000. Marcus stood up slowly. I should get back to work. $500,000. Elena's voice rose despite herself. $500,000 for a rusted piece of junk with a weird engine. Nobody, clears throat, says no to that. Nobody. Marcus turned to face her fully. For a moment, the exhaustion in his eyes was replaced by something else. Something hard, something angry. You really don't understand, do you? His voice came out quiet but sharp enough to cut. You see that car and you think money. You think opportunity. You think asset. But that's not what it is. That car is all I have left of my wife. Every time I turn that key, I hear her voice. Every mile I drive, I feel her beside me. You can't buy that. Not for $500,000. Not for $500 million. Elena felt something twist in her chest, an emotion she didn't recognize. Maybe guilt, maybe shame. She pushed it down. Everyone has a price, Marcus. No. He shook his head slowly. Everyone doesn't. Some things are sacred. Something a matter more than money. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? You've never lost anything that couldn't be replaced. He walked to the door, then stopped without turning around. I know who your father was. I know what he did, what he built, and I know what he destroyed to build it. Elena's blood went cold. What are you talking about? But Marcus was already the door swinging shut behind him. Elena spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work, but her mind kept returning to Marcus's words. I know what your father destroyed. Her father, Robert Morgan, had died 7 years ago. He'd built this company from nothing, turned it into an aerospace empire, left Elena a fortune and a legacy she was still trying to live up to. But he'd never talked about his early years, never explained where the initial capital came from, how he'd acquired the patents that launched the company, who he'd worked with before he became Robert Morgan, CEO. There are things you don't need to know, he told her once when she asked about the company's origins. Things that don't matter anymore. They mattered now. Elena could feel it like a splinter working its way toward the surface of her skin. 3 days later, Elena made her decision. She called Derek into her office at 7 o'clock in the morning. Fire him? Derek blinked in confusion. Fire who? Marcus Chen, the janitor. I want him gone by noon. What? Why? He hasn't done anything wrong. I don't need a reason. I'm the CEO. I can fire anyone I want. Security will escort him out. Make sure he doesn't take anything from the building. Derek stared at her for a long moment. Something in his face suggested he wanted to argue, wanted to understand what was happening behind Elena's perfectly composed exterior. Fine. I'll handle it. At 11:47, Marcus Chen was escorted out of Morgan Aerospace Industries by 2 security guards. Elena watched from her office window as he crossed the parking lot toward his Mustang. He didn't look back at the building, didn't make a scene, just opened the car door, slid into the driver's seat, and turned the key. That sound again. That impossible, beautiful sound. Then he drove away, and Elena was left alone with the silence and the questions she couldn't answer. She thought she'd won. She thought getting rid of him would make the problem disappear. She had no idea she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. 6 days after Marcus Chen was fired, Elena's phone rang at 3 in the morning. Dr. Jennifer Park, her head of engineering, sounded strange, tight, like she was holding something back. Turn on the news, Channel 4 right now. Elena fumbled for the remote. The screen flickered to life, showing a press conference in progress. Small podium, simple backdrop, modest production values. At the center stood a man Elena recognized instantly. Marcus Chen. He looked different, clean-shaven, wearing a simple suit. His eyes were clear and focused, the exhaustion replaced by something else. Purpose. His voice came through the speakers, calm and measured. Pleased to announce that Phoenix Systems has received federal funding of $22 million for the development of our clean energy propulsion system. This technology, which my late wife Diana and I developed together over 15 years ago, has the potential to revolutionize not just aerospace, but transportation as a whole. Elena couldn't breathe. Her coffee sat forgotten on the nightstand, going cold in the darkness of her bedroom. The Aurora engine is a self-sustaining power system that recycles its own energy output. In laboratory conditions, our prototype has run continuously for 72 hours without any external fuel source. We believe this technology can reduce carbon emissions in aviation by up to 90%, while simultaneously increasing efficiency and reducing operating costs. Reporters started shouting questions, voices overlapping in their urgency. One cut through the noise louder than the rest. Mr. Chen, is it true that this technology was stolen from you 15 years ago? Marcus paused. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. There will be a time to discuss the history of this technology. For now, I want to focus on the future, on what the Aurora engine can do for the world. My wife believed this technology could help people. That's what matters. That's what I'm here to honor. Elena muted the television. Her hands were shaking. $22 million in federal funding, a technology that could make her entire company obsolete. And Marcus Chen, the janitor she'd mocked and humiliated and fired, was now the face of the future. But it was something else that made her blood run cold. That reporter's question, is it true that this technology was stolen from you? Elena picked up the phone and dialed her father's oldest friend, Thomas Bennett, had been there at the beginning, had helped Robert Morgan build this empire from the ground up. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy with sleep. Elena, do you know what time it is? Tell me about Marcus Chen. Silence stretched across the line like a wound opening. Thomas, tell me about Marcus Chen. More silence, then a long, heavy sigh. How much do you know? I know he worked at NASA. I know he had a wife who died. I know he had a technology that someone stole from him 15 years ago. What I need to know is whether that someone was my father. The silence that followed felt like it would never end. Elena gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. I think you better come to my house. There are some files your father left with me. Files he never wanted you to see. Elena was in her car before Thomas finished speaking. Thomas Bennett lived in a mansion in Atherton, 20 minutes from Stanford. He'd known Elena since she was a child, had bounced her on his knee, had given the eulogy at her father's funeral. Now he stood at his front door at 4 in the morning, an old man in a bathrobe, holding a manila folder that seemed to weigh more than the world. Your father was a complicated man, brilliant, ruthless, capable of great kindness and great cruelty, sometimes in the same breath. Did he steal the Aurora engine? Thomas sat down heavily in a leather chair that had probably cost more than Marcus's entire annual salary. Steal is a strong word. He handed her the folder. But yes, in essence, yes. Elena opened the folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, patent applications, in a handwritten letter in her father's unmistakable script. She started reading. 15 minutes later, she looked up. Her face was pale. Her hands were trembling. He destroyed them. Marcus and his wife. They came to my father for funding, for partnership, and he took everything. He buried the patents. He threatened to bankrupt them with lawsuits if they tried to fight back. Thomas reached out and took her hand. He saw an opportunity. A young couple with no money, no connections, no way to defend themselves. and technology that could be worth billions. Your father was many things, Elena, but sentimental wasn't one of them. Elena stared at the letter in her hands. The handwriting was clear, precise, businesslike. Acquired Chen thermal regeneration patents. Legal team estimates settlement cost at $2.3 million to suppress all claims. Worth billions in long-term applications. Chen will never recover financially or professionally. Project Aurora terminated. Technology secured. Her father's words, her father's sin, and now his daughter's inheritance. I mocked him. I humiliated him in front of the whole company. I fired him, and the whole time he knew. He knew what my father did, and he never said a word. Thomas squeezed her hand gently. The question now is, what are you going to do about it? Elena looked at the folder, at the evidence of her family's betrayal, at the truth she could no longer escape. For the first time in her life, she had no idea what to do. The sun was starting to rise through Thomas's study windows, painting everything in shades of gold and regret. Elena sat there holding the proof of her father's crimes. And somewhere across the bay, Marcus Chen was building the future on the foundation of everything that had been stolen from him. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. 4 years she'd walked past him every single day. 4 years he'd been invisible to her, and now she understood why he'd stayed. Not because he needed the money, not because he had nowhere else to go. He'd stayed because he was waiting for the right moment. Waiting for someone to finally see what had been hidden in plain sight all along. That rusted Mustang in her parking lot had been a time bomb, and she just lit the fuse. Elena didn't go home that night. She sat in Thomas Bennett's study until dawn broke through the windows, reading every document in that folder over and over again. The legal filings, the patent applications, the internal memos, her father's handwritten notes, cold and calculating, describing how he'd systematically dismantled 2 people's lives to build his empire. Thomas appeared around 6 with coffee she didn't drink. You should get some sleep. How did you live with this? All these years knowing what he did. Thomas lowered himself into the chair across from her, joints protesting the early hour. Your father was my best friend for 40 years. I loved him like a brother, but I never said I was proud of everything he did. You could have told me. And what would that have changed? The patents were filed. The company was built. Marcus Chen had already disappeared. Your father convinced himself it was just business. Survival of the fittest. The strong take from the weak. Thomas shook his head slowly, morning light catching the lines in his face. I disagreed, but I didn't stop him. That's my sin to carry. Elena finally looked up. Look, her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. The technology in those patents, the Aurora engine, it's real. I've seen it. I've heard it. Marcus has been driving it around for 15 years in that old Mustang. I know. It could change everything. Aviation, transportation, energy. It could be worth billions. Thomas finished the thought for her. Yes, your father knew that too. Why do you think he was so ruthless about acquiring it? Elena stood up abruptly, pacing the study like a caged animal. But he never used it. The patents have been sitting in our archives for 15 years. We never developed the technology. We never even tried. Your father couldn't make it work. He had his engineers study the patents for years. They built prototype after prototype. Nothing performed like the original. The blueprints were incomplete. Marcus and Diana had kept the critical components in their heads, not on paper. Without their cooperation, the technology was useless. So, he stole something he couldn't even use. He stole it so no one else could use it. That was enough for him. Elena stopped pacing. She stared at Thomas with something new in her eyes, something that looked almost like hope. But Marcus still has the original, the working prototype. It's been in his car this whole time. Thomas, I need that engine. Not just for the company, for everything. Do you understand what this technology could mean? Clean energy for the entire aviation industry, reduced emissions, sustainable transportation. This isn't just about money anymore. Thomas studied her face for a long moment. Is that really why you want it? Or is it because you can't stand the thought that a janitor has something you don't? The question hit Elena like a slap. She wanted to deny it, wanted to claim noble intentions and humanitarian goals and visionary leadership, but something in Thomas's eyes made lying impossible. I don't know. I don't know what I want anymore. I just know I can't let this go. Thomas nodded slowly. Then I suppose you'd better figure out who you really are before you do something you can't take back. Your father spent his whole life taking things from people who couldn't fight back. He died rich and powerful and completely alone. Is that really the legacy you want to continue? Elena grabbed the folder and headed for the door. Thomas's voice stopped her one last time. Keep this conversation between us, Elena. Your father built his empire on stolen dreams. Don't let him steal your soul, too. 3 days later, Elena called an emergency meeting of her senior engineering team. Dr. Jennifer Park arrived first, followed by Michael Torres, who headed propulsion, and the leads from material science and advanced systems. They filed into the conference room looking confused and slightly nervous. Emergency meetings with Elena Morgan usually meant someone was about to be fired. Close the door. Elena waited until the latch clicked. What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this room. Anyone who violates that confidentiality will be terminated immediately and sued into oblivion. Understood. Nervous nods around the table. Elena pulled up the security footage on the wall screen, the same clip she'd watched a dozen times. Marcus Chen working on his car. The engine running without fuel, that impossible, beautiful sound. This is Marcus Chen. Until recently, he worked here as a janitor. Before that, he was a propulsion engineer at NASA. And that engine you're looking at is called the Aurora, a self-sustaining regenerative power system that recycles its own energy output. Dr. Park leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. That's not possible. The laws of thermodynamics. I know what the laws say. I also know what I'm seeing. That engine runs without external fuel. I've watched it happen. Michael Torres shifted uncomfortably in his seat. There must be a hidden power source. A battery? Maybe something we're not seeing in the footage. Maybe, but I don't think so. Elena paused the video on a frame showing the engine compartment. I want you to study these images. Every angle. Every frame. I want you to figure out what he built and how he built it. Then I want you to replicate it. Silence fell across the table like a weight. Dr. Park spoke slowly, carefully. You want us to reverse engineer his technology from security camera footage? Yes. Even if we could figure out the basic design, there's no way we could replicate the materials, the tolerances, the specific configurations. Engineering doesn't work like that. You can't just look at a picture of something and build it, then find another way. Hire consultants, access our patent archives, do whatever you have to do. I want a working prototype in 30 days. Michael Torres exchanged glances with the others. What patent archives? We don't have anything on regenerative energy systems. Elena's voice came out flat. Cold. Yes, we do. My father acquired patents in this area 15 years ago. They're buried somewhere in our IP holdings. Find them. Use them. I don't care what it takes. 30 days. Get it done. The team worked around the clock. Dr. Park pulled the buried patents from the archives and spent 3 days just trying to understand the basic principles. The documents were incomplete, deliberately vague in crucial areas, but they provided enough foundation to begin experimentation. Michael Torres's propulsion team built their first prototype in week 2. It failed immediately. The energy loop collapsed within seconds, the system overheating and shutting down. They rebuilt it. Failed again. Rebuilt. Failed. By week 3, they'd gone through 11 prototypes. Each one got a little closer. Each one ultimately fell apart. Park explained during a late-night meeting with Elena, exhaustion, making her words sharp. The problem is the regenerative cycle. In theory, the engine captures waste energy and feeds it back into the system, creating a near-perpetual loop. But in practice, there's always loss. Heat, dissipation, friction, electromagnetic interference. The system degrades faster than it can regenerate. Chen figured it out. Elena stood at the window looking out over San Francisco's lights. His engine runs for hours without degrading. I know, and I can't explain it. There's something in his design we're not seeing. Some component or material or configuration that the patents don't describe. Without that missing piece, we're just guessing. Then guess better. Dr. Park rubbed her eyes beyond exhaustion now, approaching something like despair. I've been an engineer for 25 years. I've worked on projects for NASA, Boeing, 3 different governments. I'm telling you, this technology is at least 30 years ahead of anything we understand. Whoever built that engine wasn't just smart. They were operating on a level we can't even comprehend. Elena stared at the latest failed prototype smoking slightly on the test bench. There has to be a way. There is. Park hesitated, knowing what she was about to say would not be well received. We could ask him. No, Elena. I said no. Find another way. But there was no other way. Elena knew it. Dr. Park knew it. Everyone on the team knew it. The only person who could make this technology work was Marcus Chen. And Marcus Chen was the one person on Earth who would never help Elena Morgan. 2 weeks after the engineering effort began, the news broke. Rachel Kim, an investigative journalist with the San Francisco Chronicle, published a front-page expose with the headline, "Aerospace Giant Built on Stolen Dreams." Elena read the article on her phone at 5 a.m, her coffee growing cold in her hand. The story was thorough, devastating. Kim had interviewed former employees from Morgan Aerospace's early days. She'd obtained internal documents through Freedom of Information requests. She'd tracked down Marcus Chen and gotten his first public statement in 15 years. My wife and I spent 7 years developing the Aurora engine. We believed it could help solve the climate crisis. We approached Robert Morgan for funding and partnership. Instead, he stole our patents, destroyed our careers, and left us with nothing. Diana died believing her life's work had been buried forever. I'm here to prove she was wrong. The article went on to detail the legal maneuvers Robert Morgan had used to acquire the patents, the threats, the intimidation, the systematic destruction of Marcus and Diana Chen's professional reputations. And then in the final paragraphs, Kim dropped the bombshell. Sources within Morgan Aerospace confirmed that the company has recently launched a secret effort to replicate Chen's technology using the stolen patents. CEO Elena Morgan, daughter of the late Robert Morgan, has reportedly ordered her engineering team to build a working prototype within 30 days, apparently hoping to beat Chen to market with his own invention. Elena's phone started ringing. Board members, investors, her consultants. The calls came faster than she could ignore them. By 9 o'clock in the morning, Morgan Aerospace stock had dropped 18%. By noon, 3 major investors had requested emergency meetings. By 5 in the afternoon, Elena's own board of directors had called for her resignation. She sat in her office as the sun set over San Francisco, watching her empire crumble in real time. Every news channel was running the story. Social media was exploding with outrage. Justice for Marcus was trending worldwide. And the worst part, the part that made Elena want to scream, was that she deserved it. Every word in that article was true. Her father had stolen the technology. She had tried to steal it again. She was exactly what the world was calling her, a privileged heir who thought rules didn't apply to her. Derek knocked on her door around 7 o'clock in the evening. The board wants an answer by morning. They're prepared to vote you out if you don't resign voluntarily. What would you do if you were me? Honestly, I'd resign. Take a severance package. Disappear for a year or 2 until this blows over. You're young enough to reinvent yourself. Run away. You mean strategic retreat. There's a difference. Elena finally turned to face him. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had changed. Some hardness had cracked. My father ran away from what he did. He buried it and pretended it never happened. And look where that got us. Look where it got me. Elena, you can't fix this. The damage is done. Chen has federal funding, public sympathy, and a working technology. You have a failed replication effort and a PR nightmare. There's no path forward here. Maybe not for the company, but maybe there's a path forward for me. Derek stared at her, confusion crossing his face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about doing something my father never did, something I've never done. She walked to her desk and picked up her keys. I'm talking about telling the truth. Elena drove for 45 minutes before she found the Idarus. Phoenix Systems operated out of a converted warehouse in Oakland, a modest building with simple signage and a small parking lot. Through the windows, she could see lights burning despite the late hour. Engineers working, machines humming, progress being made. She parked her Mercedes beside the rusted Mustang and sat for a long moment, gathering courage she wasn't sure she possessed. Then she got out and walked to the front door. It was unlocked. She stepped inside and found herself in a workshop filled with engine parts, diagnostic equipment, and the organized chaos of serious innovation. A dozen engineers looked up from their work, surprised to see a stranger. And at the center of it all stood Marcus Chen, his hands covered in grease, his eyes fixed on Elena with an expression she couldn't read. Everyone out. Marcus's voice came quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. His engineers hesitated. He spoke again, firmer this time. Now they filed past Elena without a word, glancing back over their shoulders as they went. In 30 seconds, the workshop was empty except for the two of them. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, not hurrying, letting the silence build. How did you find this place? It's listed in the federal grant documentation public record. And you came here because Elena took a breath that felt like it might be her last. I came to apologize. Silence stretched between them like wire pulled too tight. Elena pushed forward before she could lose her nerve. I read my father's files. I know what he did to you, to your wife. I know how he stole your work and destroyed your careers. I know he threatened you with lawsuits you couldn't afford to fight. I know he took everything. Marcus's expression didn't change. Elena felt tears building behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not yet. And I'm sorry. Not just for what he did, for what I did. I mocked you in front of the whole company. I tried to buy your car like it was just property. I fired you when you wouldn't give me what I wanted. And then I tried to steal your technology again. Just like he did. Is this supposed to make me feel better? No. This is supposed to be the truth. Something my family hasn't been very good at telling. Marcus sat down the rag and leaned against a workbench. For a long moment he just studied her, his dark eyes searching for something. Your father came to me once, about a year after he took the patents. Diana was already sick by then. We were drowning in medical bills, couldn't afford lawyers, couldn't afford to fight, and he showed up at our apartment in a $3,000 suit, offering to make things right. Elena felt sick. What did he offer? $200,000. Hush money. Sign a confidentiality agreement. Walk away. Never speak of the Aurora engine again. Marcus's jaw tightened and clears throat. Elena saw the 15-year-old wound open fresh. Diana was dying. We needed that money. We could have used it for treatment, for comfort, for more time together. And you know what she said? Elena shook her head, unable to speak. She said, "Some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth more than survival. If we take his offer, we'll be dead inside long before the cancer finishes me off." Marcus's voice broke slightly on the last words. She died 3 months later. Never saw a dime of that money. Never saw her work validated. But she died with her integrity intact. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. She didn't bother to wipe them away. I can't give back what my father took. I can't bring Diana back. I can't undo 15 years of pain and injustice, but I can stop being the person I've been. I can stop being him. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I don't know yet. I just know I had to start here with you, with the truth. The workshop hummed around them, machines idling, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Marcus was quiet for so long, Elena thought he might just tell her to leave. Then he walked to a shelf and pulled down a thick binder. Its pages yellowed with age. He held it for a moment, weighing it in his hands like he was weighing her soul. You know what I remember most about Diana? She believed in second chances, not because people deserve them. Most of the time they don't, but because she believed that people can change, that the worst version of ourselves doesn't have to be the final version. He held the binder out to Elena. These are the original Aurora engine specifications, handwritten by me and Diana. Everything your father couldn't steal because we kept it in our heads. Elena stared at the binder like it might explode. Why would you give this to me? I'm not giving it to you. I'm testing you. Marcus's eyes were hard now, all the softness gone. Take this home. Study it. If you can understand what Diana and I built, not just the mechanics, but the philosophy, the reasoning, the heart of it, then maybe you're capable of being someone different than your father. And if you can't, then you'll prove that you're exactly who I think you are. And this conversation will be the last we ever have. Elena reached out slowly and took the binder. It was heavier than she expected, dense with years of work and love and hope. How long do I have? As long as it takes. Marcus turned back to his work. Close the door on your way out. Elena walked out into the Oakland night, clutching the binder to her chest. Behind her, the lights of Phoenix Systems glowed warm against the darkness. In her hands, she held the key to redemption. She just didn't know yet if she was strong enough to turn it. Elena didn't go back to her penthouse. She couldn't face the empty rooms, the expensive furniture, the view of a city that suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. Instead, she drove to a 24-hour diner off Highway 101, ordered coffee she didn't drink, and opened the binder. The first page hit her like a punch to the chest. In elegant handwriting, a woman's handwriting, Diana's handwriting, were the words, "For Marcus, for our future, for everyone who needs light in the darkness." Elena stared at that dedication for a long time. This wasn't just engineering. This was love. This was hope. This was everything her father had tried to destroy and failed. She turned the page and started reading. The mathematics were brutal. Elena had studied engineering in college, had sat through countless technical presentations, had enough background to understand most of what crossed her desk. But this was different. This was genius on a level she'd never encountered. Every equation built on the one before it. Every diagram contained layers of meaning. Diana and Marcus hadn't just designed an engine. They'd created a philosophy of energy, a new way of thinking about power and motion and sustainability. By 3 o'clock in the morning, Elena's head was pounding. She'd filled half a legal pad with notes, most of them questions she couldn't answer. The waitress had refilled her coffee 4 times and was starting to give her concerned looks. Elena didn't care. She kept reading. Around 5, she found the section labeled Core Principles in Marcus's handwriting. The Aurora engine is not about creating energy from nothing. That's impossible. It's about respect, respecting the energy that already exists, capturing what would otherwise be lost, treating waste as opportunity. Diana always said that the universe doesn't have a scarcity problem. It has a wisdom problem. We throw away more than we use. The Aurora changes that. Elena read those words 3 times, respecting the energy that already exists. She thought about her own life, the energy she'd wasted on appearances, on competition, on proving herself to people who didn't matter, the opportunities she'd thrown away because they didn't fit her image of success, the relationships she'd burned because maintaining them required effort she wasn't willing to give. She'd been living her whole life like a wasteful engine, losing more than she used. The sun was rising by the time she left the diner. She drove to a storage facility in Menlo Park, rented the largest unit available, and started making calls. I need equipment. Dr. Park sounded half asleep on the other end of the line. Machine tools, diagnostic systems, everything we use for the prototype attempts. Elena, the board is meeting in 3 hours. They're going to vote you out. I know, I'm not going to the meeting. What? You have to be there. You have to defend yourself. No, I don't. I'm done defending who I was. I'm going to become someone worth defending. Send me the equipment, Jennifer. I'll pay for it myself. She hung up before Dr. Park could argue. Over the next 6 hours, Elena transformed the storage unit into a workshop. She maxed out 3 credit cards buying parts and materials. She downloaded software, watched tutorial videos, read technical manuals until her eyes burned. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Morgan Aerospace Board removed CEO Elena Morgan in unanimous vote. She read the headlines, set down her phone, and got back to work. The first prototype took her 8 days to build. It was ugly, clumsy. The welds were uneven, the connections imprecise. Her hands, so from years of signing documents and shaking hands at cocktail parties, were blistered and cut. She'd burned herself twice with the soldering iron, hit her thumb with a hammer hard enough to turn the nail black, and spent one entire night crying in frustration when a circuit board she'd spent 12 hours assembling turned out to be wired backward. But she kept going. She slept on an air mattress in the corner of the storage unit. She ate takeout from the Chinese place down the street, sometimes forgetting to eat at all until hunger made her handshake. She showered at a truck stop 3 blocks away. She talked to no one except the delivery drivers who brought her supplies. On day 8, she connected the power cell and turned on her prototype. It ran for 4 seconds before the energy loop collapsed and the whole system overheated. Elena sat on the concrete floor, staring at the smoking wreckage of her work, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not frustration, determination. She went back to the binder, read the section on energy loop stabilization 3 more times, found a notation in Diana's handwriting that she'd missed before. The key is patience. The system needs time to find its rhythm. Don't force it. Guide it. Don't force it. Guide it. Elena thought about how she lived her whole life. Forcing, demanding, taking, never guiding, never waiting, never trusting anything to develop naturally. She rebuilt the prototype, took her time, paid attention to the rhythm Diana described. When she connected the power cell again, she didn't slam the switch. She eased it gently, like coaxing a frightened animal. The engine ran for 30 seconds, then 45, then a minute and 12 seconds before it failed. Progress. 3 weeks into her exile, Thomas Bennett found her. He stood in the doorway of the storage unit, staring at the chaos inside. The scattered tools, the failed prototypes, the sleeping bag in the corner. The woman who used to run a $4 billion company, now wearing stained coveralls and a ponytail held together with a rubber band. My God, what have you done to yourself? Elena didn't look up from the circuit board she was soldering. I'm learning. Learning what? How to destroy your life. Elena, the board has frozen your assets pending an investigation. Your accounts are locked and you're living in a storage unit like a homeless person. I'm not homeless. I'm working. Thomas walked closer, stepping carefully around the debris on the floor. He picked up the binder from Marcus Chen, flipped through a few pages, and set it down again. He gave you this. He's testing me. If I can build the engine, he'll know I'm serious about changing. And if you can't... Elena finally looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot, exhausted, but there was something in them that Thomas had never seen before. Something that looked almost like peace. Then I'll keep trying until I can. The board is talking about criminal charges. They're saying you orchestrated the cover-up of your father's theft, that you knew about the stolen patents for years. That's securities fraud, intellectual property theft, conspiracy. You're looking at potential prison time. Let them charge me. I don't care anymore. You should care. Thomas's voice rose slightly despite his usual control. Elena, I spent my whole life caring about the wrong things. She set down the soldering iron, gave Thomas her full attention. Stock prices, board meetings, what people thought of me, what my father thought of me, and where did it get me? I was the CEO of a company built on stolen dreams, and I didn't even know it. I was so busy protecting my image that I never bothered to look at what was underneath. She held up the circuit board, examining it in the light. This is real. This work. This challenge. For the first time in my life, I'm trying to build something instead of take something. And even if I fail, even if I go to prison, even if I lose everything, at least I'll know I tried to be different than him. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Your father would have called you a fool. I know. He would have said, "You're throwing away everything he built. He built it on lies. It was never worth keeping." Thomas stood up slowly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Before I came here, I liquidated some of my own holdings. Cash, untraceable. It's not much, about 80,000, but it should keep you going for a while. Elena stared at the envelope, then at Thomas's face. Why would you do that? Because I failed your father once. I watched him do terrible things and said nothing. I won't make the same mistake with you. He pressed the envelope into her hands. Be better than him, Elena. That's all I ask. He walked to the door, then paused without turning around. For what it's worth, I think Diana Chen would have liked you. The person you were becoming, I mean, not the person you were. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her work and her binder and the ghost of a woman she'd never met. The breakthrough came on day 37. Elena had rebuilt the prototype 9 times. Each version got a little better, ran a little longer. She'd learned to read Diana's handwriting like a second language, to anticipate Marcus's logic, to understand the philosophy behind every design choice. And finally, something clicked. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No lightning bolt of inspiration, no sudden revelation, just a quiet understanding that had been building for weeks. Pieces falling into place one by one until the whole picture became clear. The Aurora engine wasn't just about energy recapture. It was about harmony. Every component had to work with every other component, not against it. The system couldn't be forced or dominated. It had to be balanced, guided, respected, just like Diana had written. Elena made one final adjustment, a small change to the energy flow regulator, something she'd overlooked a dozen times before. She connected the power cell, held her breath, and turned the key. The engine started, smooth, quiet, perfect. Elena watched the diagnostic readouts, waiting for the collapse, waiting for the overheat warning, waiting for failure. 5 minutes passed, and 20 the energy loop held. The system recycled its own output, feeding back into itself, sustaining motion without external fuel. It wasn't perpetual. Nothing was perpetual, but it was close. Closer than anything she'd ever seen. Elena sat down on the concrete floor and cried. Not from exhaustion, though she was exhausted. Not from relief, though she was relieved. She cried because for the first time in her life, she had built something real, something true, something that mattered. And she cried because she understood now what Marcus had lost. The woman who had written those notes, who had dreamed these dreams, who had poured her heart into this impossible vision, she was gone. And all the money and power in the world couldn't bring her back. Elena cried for Diana Chen, a woman she'd never known and could never thank. And somewhere in those tears, she found the person she wanted to become. She called Marcus the next morning. It works. The engine. I built it. It's been running for 14 hours. Silence on the other end of the line. Did you hear me? I said I heard you. Marcus's voice was strange, guarded, but something else too. Something that might have been surprise. You actually did it. I want to show you. I want you to see that I understand what you and Diana created. Not just the mechanics, the meaning, the philosophy. I want you to know that I get it now. Why does that matter to you? Elena gripped the phone tighter. Because I need you to see that I'm not my father. I need someone, anyone, to believe that people can change, that I can change. More silence. Then his voice came back, softer but still careful. Where are you? She gave him the address. I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't touch anything. Marcus arrived at exactly the time he said he would. He walked into the storage unit without speaking, his eyes moving across the chaos, the failed prototypes in the corner, the tools scattered across workbenches, the binder lying open to a page covered in Elena's handwritten notes. Then he saw the engine. It was still running, that smooth, quiet hum filling the space like music. The diagnostic screens showed stable readings. The energy loop was holding perfectly. Marcus walked closer. He examined every connection, every circuit, every component. He checked the readings, ran his own diagnostics, monitored the system for any sign of degradation. 15 minutes passed in silence. Finally, he turned to face Elena. How long did this take you? 37 days, and you built it alone. No help from anyone. No help. Just the binder and a lot of trial and error. Marcus looked back at the engine. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were trembling slightly. This configuration, the adjustment you made to the flow regulator, it's not in the binder. Elena nodded carefully. I know. I figured it out on my own. It's based on something Diana wrote in the margins about harmony, about every component working with every other component. I realized the original design had a small imbalance in the feedback loop. The change corrects it. Marcus stared at her in a way that made Elena's chest tighten. You improved it. You actually improved our design. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to make it work. No. Marcus shook his head slowly, something like wonder creeping into his voice. Diana and I spent 7 years on this engine. We knew that imbalance was there, but we couldn't figure out how to fix it. And you found the answer in 37 days. Elena didn't know what to say. Marcus walked to the binder and picked it up. He flipped through the pages slowly, looking at Elena's notes, her calculations, her questions and answers written in the margins alongside Diana's original text. She would have liked this, Diana. She would have liked seeing her work continue, seeing someone else understand what we were trying to do. I wish I could have met her. So do I. Marcus set down the binder and turned to face Elena fully. You know what she told me once, right before she died? She said that the Aurora engine wasn't just about energy. It was about faith. Faith that the universe gives us what we need if we're wise enough to accept it. Faith that waste can become wealth and loss can become gain. He paused, and Elena saw tears gathering in his eyes. She said that someday the right person would find our work and carry it forward. Someone who understood that technology isn't about power. It's about service, about helping people. Elena felt tears burning in her own eyes again. I'm not sure I'm that person. No, you're not. Not yet. Marcus's voice was gentle now, almost kind, but you might be becoming her. And that's more than I ever expected. He reached out his hand. Elena stared at it for a moment, not understanding. Then Marcus spoke again, and the words landed with the weight of everything that had come before. I need a partner. Phoenix Systems is growing faster than I can handle alone. The federal grant is just the beginning. We've got interest from airlines, from governments, from companies all over the world. I need someone who understands the technology, who believes in the mission, and who has the skills to navigate the business side of things. You want me to work with you? I want to give you a chance to prove who you are. Not your father's daughter, not the CEO who fired me, but the woman who spent 37 days in a storage unit destroying her hands and her reputation and her pride just to understand what two people built out of love. Elena looked at his hand, rough, calloused, the hand of a man who had lost everything and refused to give up. She thought about her own hands, blistered now. Scarred, transformed. She took his hand and shook it. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever met. I'll do whatever it takes to earn this. I know you will. Marcus released her hand and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped and turned back. Shut down the engine and pack your things. You start tomorrow. And Elena? She looked up at him. Thank you for giving me the chance. For believing I could change. For the first time since she'd met him, something that might have been a smile crossed Marcus's face. Don't thank me yet. The hard part is just beginning. Then he walked out into the morning sun, leaving Elena alone with the engine and the binder and the future she was finally ready to build. Elena showed up at Phoenix Systems at 6 o'clock the next morning, 3 hours before anyone else arrived. The door was locked, so she sat on the concrete steps outside and waited. Oakland fog hung thick over the street, turning everything soft and gray. She pulled her jacket tighter and watched her breath form clouds in the cold air. Sleep hadn't come. Her mind kept racing through everything that had happened. The storage unit, the engine, Marcus's hand reaching out to her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Diana's handwriting in the binder. Those careful notes filled with hope and love and scientific genius that had outlived the woman who wrote them. A car pulled into the lot at 6:47, the Mustang still carrying its impossible secret under that battered hood. Marcus got out and stopped when he saw her on the steps. You're early. I couldn't sleep. That'll pass. He walked past her and unlocked the door, morning light catching the gray in his hair. Come on. I'll show you where you'll be working. The workshop looked different in the early light, quieter, more intimate. Elena followed Marcus through the main floor, past the workbenches and diagnostic equipment to a small office in the back corner. This was supposed to be a supply closet, but we needed the space. You'll share it with our CFO if we ever hire one. Elena looked around. A metal desk, 2 folding chairs, an ancient computer that probably ran Windows XP. A single window looking out at the parking lot. The smallest office she'd ever seen, smaller than her penthouse bathroom. It's perfect. Marcus raised an eyebrow in a way that suggested he didn't quite believe her. You used to have a corner office with a view of the entire Bay Area. I used to be a lot of things. Elena set her bag on the desk, meeting his gaze without flinching. What do you need me to do? For the next 3 months, Elena learned what it meant to build something from nothing. She answered phones when the receptionist was overwhelmed. She filed paperwork that the government required in triplicate. She negotiated with suppliers who didn't return calls because they'd never heard of Phoenix Systems and didn't care about clean energy or revolutionary engines. She learned to fix the coffee maker when it broke, to unclog the toilet when the plumber wanted $300 just to show up, to stay late reconciling spreadsheets because they couldn't afford an accountant yet. The other engineers didn't trust her at first. They'd all heard the stories. The CEO who mocked their boss in a parking lot. The heiress who tried to steal their technology. They watched her with suspicious eyes, waiting for the mask to slip. Waiting for the real Elena Morgan to emerge and reveal that this whole redemption act was just another scheme. Elena didn't blame them. She just kept working, kept showing up at 6 o'clock, kept staying until midnight, kept doing whatever needed to be done without complaint or expectation of recognition. One night, about 6 weeks in, she was alone in the workshop running diagnostics on a new prototype iteration when Marcus appeared beside her room. The building was dark except for her workstation. Everyone else long gone home to families and lives that existed outside these walls. It's midnight. Go home. I want to finish these tests. The Boeing meeting is in 3 days. If we don't have solid data, the tests can wait. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm, carrying an authority that didn't come from volume. You've been here since 6 this morning. You've been here since 6 o'clock every morning for 6 weeks. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Elena tried to remember and couldn't. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down beside her, close enough that she could smell motor oil and something else. Something that reminded her of honesty. You're going to burn out and then you'll be useless to everyone, including yourself. I can't stop. Elena's voice cracked despite her best efforts to keep it steady. Every time I slow down, I think about everything I did, everything my father did. I think about how many years you lost because of us, how Diana died without ever seeing her work recognized. I can't just go home and watch TV and pretend everything's okay. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then he started talking, his voice soft in the darkness of the workshop. Let me tell you something about Diana. When she was dying, when we both knew she only had a few weeks left, I wanted to spend every minute at her bedside. I wanted to hold her hand and tell her I loved her, and make up for all the time we'd lost fighting for the patents, fighting against your father, fighting to survive. He paused, and Elena saw something raw in his expression. You know what she said? She said, Marcus, if you sit here watching me die, you will die too. Not physically, but inside. You'll carry this grief like a weight until it crushes you. She made me promise to take breaks, to eat meals, to sleep, to live. Elena felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. She said that guilt is just another form of selfishness. When we punish ourselves, we're making everything about us, our pain, our redemption, our story. But real change isn't about punishment. It's about service. It's about taking the energy we'd waste on guilt and using it to help someone else. How do you do that? Elena's whisper barely carried across the space between them. How do you stop feeling guilty for something that can never be fixed? You don't stop feeling it. You just learn to carry it differently, like the engine. You don't eliminate the waste. You transform it. You turn it into something useful. Elena looked at the prototype on the bench, the smooth curves of the housing, the precise arrangement of components. Diana's design improved by Elena's hands, carrying forward by Marcus's faith. I don't know if I can do this. Be the person you need me to be. The person Diana would have wanted. Neither do I. Marcus stood up, stretching muscles that had been bent over engines too long. But I'm willing to find out. Are you? Elena nodded. Marcus walked toward the door, then stopped halfway. Go home. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow, ready to transform your waste into something useful. Something shifted between them in that moment. Not romance yet, but the foundation of trust that would make romance possible. The understanding that they were both carrying weight too heavy to bear alone. That maybe together they could distribute the load. The Boeing meeting changed everything. Elena had spent weeks preparing financial projections, technical specifications, market analyses, risk assessments. She'd rehearsed her presentation until she could deliver it in her sleep, anticipated every possible question and objection. But when the Boeing executives walked into the Phoenix Systems workshop, led by a silver-haired woman named Margaret Foster, who looked like she'd forgotten more about aerospace than most people would ever learn, they didn't want to see PowerPoint slides. We've read your materials. Impressive numbers, but numbers can be manipulated. Show us something real. Margaret's voice carried the weight of 32 years in an industry that didn't suffer fools or forgive failures. Marcus looked at Elena. Elena looked at the Mustang parked in the corner of the workshop where it always was, where it had been for 15 years, waiting for this moment. Follow me. She led the Boeing team outside to where the car sat in morning sun that made the rust look almost intentional, like art instead of decay. Margaret Foster wrinkled her nose in an expression that suggested she'd seen better cars in junkyards. This is your demonstration. This is the original, the first Aurora engine ever built. It's been running for 15 years in this car. It's survived cross-country trips, California summers, freezing winters. It's never needed a major repair. It's never needed fuel. Never needed fuel. Margaret's skepticism came through sharp and clear. That's quite a claim. Watch. Elena opened the hood. The Boeing engineers crowded around, their doubt giving way to curiosity as they examined the components. Elena pointed out the energy recapture systems, the regenerative loops, the harmonized flow regulators that she'd refined in that storage unit. Marcus connected the monitoring equipment while Elena climbed into the driver's seat. The leather was cracked and worn. The dashboard faded. It looked like a car that should have been scrapped a decade ago. Elena turned the key and the engine sang. That perfect, impossible sound filled the parking lot. The Boeing engineers stared at their tablets, watching the data flow across their screens. Energy in, energy recycled, energy out. A loop that sustained itself, that grew stronger over time instead of weaker. One of the engineers whispered something that sounded like prayer or blasphemy. That's not possible, and yet there it is. Elena's response came quiet but absolute. The demonstration lasted an hour. Elena answered every question, explained every component, walked through every technical detail without overselling or exaggerating. She just told the truth about what Marcus and Diana had built and what it could do. When it was over, Margaret Foster stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the Mustang like she was seeing the future taking shape in rust and determination. I've been in this industry for 32 years. I've seen a lot of people promise miracles. Most of them were lying. A few of them were delusional. But this, she shook her head slowly, something like wonder creeping into her professional composure. This is real. It's real, and we're ready to scale it. Margaret turned to face Elena fully, and the moment stretched, taut with possibility and danger. I know who you are, Miss Morgan. I know what your father did. I know what you did. There are people at Boeing who think we shouldn't be anywhere near you or this company. Elena's stomach tightened, but she held Margaret's gaze. What do you think? I think people can change. I think technology doesn't care about politics or history or family legacies. And I think this engine could transform the entire aviation industry. Margaret extended her hand. Boeing is prepared to offer an exclusive partnership agreement, $10 billion over 5 years in exchange for first-mover access to the Aurora technology. $10 billion. Elena felt dizzy. This was more money than she'd ever handled at Morgan Aerospace, more than her father's entire company had been worth when he died. But it wasn't the money that made her hands shake. It was the validation, the proof that Diana's dream could survive, could flourish, could change the world exactly the way she'd hoped. We'll need to discuss terms, of course. But Elena, Margaret's grip was firm, her eyes harder than steel. Don't make us regret this. There won't be a second chance. 3 weeks after the Boeing deal was announced, Elena called a press conference. She stood backstage in a modest conference center in downtown San Francisco, wearing a simple black suit with no jewelry, nothing that would remind anyone of the woman she used to be. Her hands were shaking. Marcus stood beside her close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You don't have to do this. We could settle the lawsuit privately. Find another way. No. Elena shook her head, feeling the weight of everything that had brought her to this moment. I spent my whole life hiding from hard truths, running from my father's shadow, pretending I could inherit his success without inheriting his sins. That ends today. Are you scared? Terrified? Elena laughed, and it came out shaky but real. But Diana was right. Guilt is just another form of selfishness. I've been so focused on my own redemption that I forgot about everyone else who was hurt. The investors who trusted Morgan Aerospace, the employees who lost their jobs. You, the man who lost 15 years of his life. She turned to face Marcus fully. If I can't face the truth in public, then everything I've done in the past 6 months is just performance. Marcus reached out and squeezed her hand. For what it's worth, I don't think it's performance. I think you've actually changed. How can you tell? Because the Elena Morgan I met a year ago would never be shaking before a press conference. She was too sure of herself, too armored. The woman standing here right now is vulnerable. Real. He released her hand, but the warmth lingered. Diana always said that vulnerability is the price of transformation. If it doesn't scare you, it isn't real change. The stage manager appeared at Elena's elbow. Miss Morgan, they're ready for you. Elena took a deep breath that felt like it might be her last as the old version of herself. Wish me luck. I don't believe in luck. I believe in choices. Go make the right one. The conference room was packed. Journalists, investors, industry analysts, lawyers. Everyone who mattered in the aerospace world had come to hear what Elena Morgan had to say. Cameras lined the back wall. Microphones bristled from the podium. The buzz of conversation fell silent as Elena walked to the stage. She set her notes on the podium, looked out at the crowd, and pushed the notes aside. I had a speech prepared. 3 pages of carefully worded statements designed to minimize legal liability and protect my reputation. But I've decided to do something different. I've decided to tell you the truth. The room went completely still. 15 years ago, my father, Robert Morgan, founder of Morgan Aerospace, stole revolutionary technology from 2 young engineers named Marcus and Diana Chen. He used lawyers and threats and his superior resources to take their patents, destroy their careers, and bury their work. The foundation of Morgan Aerospace, the technology that made us an industry leader, was built on that theft. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Keyboards started clicking in as journalists began typing frantically. Elena pushed forward, her voice steady now, finding strength in honesty. I didn't know about this until recently. But ignorance isn't innocence. I benefited from what my father did. I built my career on his stolen success. And when I finally learned the truth, my first instinct was to do what he would have done. To steal from Marcus Chen again. To take the Aurora engine technology and claim it for Morgan Aerospace. She paused, letting the confession settle like ash. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm here today to acknowledge that, to apologize for it, and to commit publicly to a different path. Elena talked for 45 minutes. She laid out the entire history without softening or excusing. Her father's theft, the buried patents, Marcus and Diana's destroyed careers. She explained how she'd learned the truth, how she'd tried to replicate the technology, how she'd been forced out of her own company when the scandal broke. Then she talked about the storage unit, the 37 days, the blisters on her hands, and the ache in her shoulders. The moment the engine finally ran and she understood what Diana had been trying to teach her. I can't undo what my father did. I can't bring back the years Marcus lost. I can't give Diana the recognition she deserved while she was alive. But I can do something he never did. I can tell the truth. I can use whatever influence I have left to make sure the Aurora technology reaches the people who need it. I can spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the second chance I've been given. She looked directly into the cameras, knowing her words would be dissected and analyzed and probably used against her. To everyone who was hurt by my father's actions, I'm sorry. To Marcus Chen, who showed me grace when I deserve condemnation. Thank you. And to Diana Chen, who I never had the honor to meet, I promise you that your dream will not be buried again. Your work will change the world and everyone will know your name. Elena stepped back from the podium. The room erupted with questions, hostile and sympathetic voices overlapping in their urgency. She answered them one by one for an hour, hiding nothing, deflecting nothing. By the end, she was exhausted, emptied out, but also somehow lighter, like she'd been carrying stones in her pockets and finally let them fall. She walked off stage to find Marcus waiting. His eyes were wet. You did it. You actually did it. Is it enough? I don't know, but it's a start. They walked out of the conference center together into the bright California sun, into a future neither of them could predict, but both were willing to face. 2 weeks after Elena's confession, Phoenix Systems received an anonymous tip. Someone was leaking technical specifications to a Chinese competitor. Marcus found Elena in the workshop late one evening, his expression dark. We have a mole. Someone's trying to sabotage us. Elena felt ice spread through her chest. She'd seen this pattern before, recognized the tactics from her years at Morgan Aerospace. This isn't random. Someone knows exactly how my father operated. Legal threats, supplier disruptions, false information to regulators. Marcus leaned against a workbench processing. Who would have that knowledge? Elena's eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. Derek Walsh. She called her contacts at Morgan Aerospace, people who still owed her favors or feared her enough to answer. The story came together in fragments. Derek had been Robert Morgan's right-hand man 15 years ago. Derek knew about the stolen patents, had helped orchestrate the cover-up. After Robert died, Derek stayed to protect the secret, to ensure no one ever discovered the foundation of rot beneath the gleaming surface. Now that Elena had exposed everything, Derek was trying to destroy Phoenix Systems before it could succeed. They set a trap, a fake technical meeting where Elena mentioned a breakthrough that didn't exist. That night, they watched the security footage as Derek Walsh broke into the workshop, photographed documents, planted malware on computers. They had him on camera. They had proof. The next morning, Elena walked into a Morgan Aerospace board meeting uninvited. The current board of directors, the people who'd voted her out, looked up in shock as she entered with Marcus beside her and a tablet in her hands. "I'd like to introduce someone who was there from the beginning. Derek Walsh, my father's accomplice in the theft of Aurora technology." She played the footage, showed the documents, laid out the email trails and offshore payments that Derek had been receiving from companies trying to steal Phoenix's secrets. Derek tried to deny it, his voice rising in desperation. "This is ridiculous. You're desperate. You're trying to deflect from your own failures." Elena held up the tablet. "These are your emails to a Chinese competitor. These are your payments from offshore accounts. You helped my father steal from Marcus Chen, and when I tried to make it right, you tried to destroy us." Security was already moving. Board members sat stunned as Derek was escorted out in handcuffs, his face red with rage and something that might have been fear. "Your father would be ashamed of you, Elena." "Good." Elena's response came cold and clear. "I'm ashamed of him too. That's the difference between us." After Derek's arrest, the remaining Morgan Aerospace board members approached Elena with an offer. They would settle all claims, provide resources to Phoenix Systems, license the Aurora technology, and pay royalties. The company that had stolen the engine would now pay for the privilege of using it. Elena looked at Marcus. "What do you think?" "I think Diana would say that justice isn't about revenge. It's about making things right." They accepted the settlement, money that would fund research and development for years, money that would ensure Aurora technology reached the people who needed it most, money that transformed theft into restitution. But something else was happening too. Something quieter. But just as important, Marcus's daughter Sophie and Elena's daughter Maya had encountered each other at Phoenix Systems after school one afternoon. Sophie was 14, smart and serious, carrying her mother's curiosity about how things worked. Maya was 12, sensitive and watchful, desperate for attention her mother had been too busy to give. They bonded over shared experience, the stranges of having a single parent who worked too much, the loneliness of homes that felt empty, the confusion of watching their parents transform into different people. "It's weird, right?" Maya spoke first, her voice tentative. "My mom working with your dad." Sophie shrugged in the way teenagers did when they were pretending not to care about something that mattered deeply. "Yeah, but weird isn't always bad. Your mom works harder than anyone I've ever seen, and she talks about my mom like she really cares." Elena was walking past when she heard their voices. She stopped, hidden from view, listening. "Does your dad hate my mom?" Sophie considered this carefully. "I don't think so. I think he's scared. Scared of trusting someone again. Scared of letting someone new into our lives. We were just him and me for so long. My mom's scared too." Maya's voice was so quiet, Elena almost couldn't hear it. "She's different now. She smiles more. Real smiles. I haven't seen her like this since Dad died." Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. She'd been so focused on redemption and work and proving herself that she hadn't realized how much Maya had been watching, hoping, waiting for her mother to come back from wherever she'd been lost. That night, Elena went home early for the first time in months. She found Maya in her room doing homework with headphones on. Elena knocked gently. Maya pulled off the headphones, surprise crossing her face. "You're home?" "I am. Want to get dinner?" "Just us. No work, no phones, just you and me." Maya's smile was like sunrise breaking through fog. "Really?" Really? I'm sorry I've been absent. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. That ends now. They went to a small Italian place Maya loved, the kind of restaurant Elena never would have chosen before because it didn't impress anyone important. They talked about school and friends and Maya's fear that she wasn't smart enough, wasn't interesting enough, wasn't enough. Elena held her daughter's hand across the table. You are more than enough. You've always been enough. I was just too blind and too broken to see it. But I see you now, and I'm never looking away again. Meanwhile, Marcus was having a similar conversation with Sophie in their small apartment in Oakland. They sat on the worn couch that had been Diana's favorite, eating Chinese takeout from containers. I like Elena. Sophie spoke carefully, knowing this territory was complicated. I know what her father did to you and Mom, but she's not him. She works harder than anyone, and she talks about Mom like Mom mattered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. She does matter, and yes, Elena is different. She's trying very hard to be different. Sophie hesitated, then pushed forward. Dad, you haven't been happy in a long time. Not really happy, but lately you smile more. You laugh. You're lighter. Is that because of her? Marcus looked at his daughter. This girl who was becoming a woman who saw too much and understood even more. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't felt this way since your mother. And I don't know if I'm allowed to. Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that once when she was sick. She made me promise that if you ever found someone who made you feel alive again, I'd be okay with it. Sophie's eyes were shining now. I'm okay with it, Dad. More than okay. I think Mom would have liked Elena, not who Elena was, but who she's becoming. Marcus pulled Sophie into a hug. This daughter who carried Diana's wisdom and his stubbornness in her own fierce grace. The next time Marcus and Elena were alone in the workshop working late on a prototype refinement, Elena reached for a tool at the same moment Marcus did. Their hands touched. Both froze. Neither pulled away. Elena. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. I know this is complicated. It's not complicated. It's terrifying. I haven't felt this way since Diana, and I don't know if I'm allowed to. Elena turned to face him fully, her hands still touching his. I don't know if I deserve to. I spent my whole life taking things I didn't earn. I don't want to take this too. You're not taking anything. I'm offering. If you want it. If you think you're ready. Elena looked at him. This man she'd humiliated, whose life her father had destroyed, who had given her a second chance when no one else would. I don't know if I'm ready, but I don't want to run from it either. Marcus leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. Elena didn't pull away. Their lips met, gentle and tentative and full of promise. When they parted, both had tears on their faces. Was that okay? That was more than okay. 2 weeks later, Sophie and Maya put their plan into action. They'd been conspiring, these daughters who recognized what their parents were too scared to admit. Sophie called her dad and told him Elena needed to discuss the Boeing contract over dinner. Maya called her mom and told her Marcus wanted her input on technical specifications. Both Marcus and Elena arrived at the restaurant to find their daughter sitting at a table grinning. Surprise, we made you a date. Sophie's voice carried satisfaction and mischief in equal measure. You two need to stop being scared and just admit you like each other. Maya added her own contribution. You both deserve to be happy, and we want to be a family. A real family. Marcus and Elena looked at each other, then at their daughters, then back at each other. Marcus started laughing first. Elena followed. They sat down at the table, and the four of them had dinner together, talking and laughing and building the foundation of something new. That dinner became weekly, then twice weekly. Then Marcus and Sophie were at Elena's house more often than their own apartment. Then Elena was keeping a toothbrush at Marcus's place. Then the question wasn't if they were together, but when they'd make it official. 6 months after Elena's confession, Marcus asked her to marry him. No ring, no elaborate proposal. Just the two of them in the workshop late at night, covered in grease, having just solved a particularly difficult engineering problem together. Marry me. Not because you owe me anything, or because you're trying to make up for the past. Marry me because when I look at you, I see someone worth building a future with. Someone who understands that the best things in life are the ones we create together. Elena said yes without hesitation. Sophie and Maya, who'd been eavesdropping from the office, came running out screaming with joy. The wedding was small, close friends and family only. Thomas Bennett walked Elena down the aisle, tears streaming down his ancient face. Dr. Jennifer Park was there, having left Morgan Aerospace to join Phoenix Systems full-time. Sophie and Maya served as joint maids of honor, wearing matching dresses they'd picked out together. Marcus's vows were simple. Diana taught me that love isn't about holding on to the past, it's about having the courage to build something new. Elena, you've shown me that people can change, that broken things can be repaired, that waste can become wealth. I promise to spend every day of my life helping you transform into the person you want to become. Elena's vows came through tears. Marcus, you gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. You taught me that real value comes not from what you inherit, but from what you build. You showed me that integrity matters more than success, that truth matters more than comfort. I promised to spend every day of my life honoring Diana's legacy and creating our future. 10 months after the wedding, on a clear October morning, the first commercial flight using Aurora engine technology took off from San Francisco International Airport. Marcus and Elena stood on the observation deck with Sophie and Maya, all four holding hands. The Boeing 787 had been retrofitted with Aurora propulsion systems painted in a special livery for the occasion. Deep blue with gold accents, and on the tail a single word in elegant script, Diana. Marcus saw the name and started crying immediately. Elena put her arm around him. You didn't have to do that. Name it after her. Yes, I did. This is her achievement, her legacy. The world needs to know who made this possible. The engine spooled up, that familiar sound Elena had first heard in a parking lot what felt like a lifetime ago. The aircraft began to move faster and faster until it lifted off the ground and climbed into the blue California sky. She's flying. Marcus's whisper broke on the words. Diana's finally flying. Elena held him as he cried. Sophie and Maya pressed close on either side, the four of them standing together as family while the crowd around them erupted in cheers. When the plane disappeared into the clouds, Marcus wiped his eyes and turned to Elena. Thank you for everything, for changing, for helping me finish what we started. I should be thanking you. You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. You taught me what it means to build something real. We taught each other. That's what partnership means. Years later, the National Museum of American Innovation created a permanent exhibit honoring the Aurora engine. They wanted to display the original prototype, the rusted Mustang that had carried the secret through 15 years of obscurity. Marcus agreed on one condition. Elena had to be there for the unveiling. The ceremony was held on a crisp November afternoon. The museum had recreated a version of the Phoenix Systems workshop, complete with workbenches and diagnostic equipment. At the center sat the Mustang, rust-preserved, paint untouched, exactly as it had looked that day in the parking lot. A bronze plaque stood beside it. Elena read it aloud during her speech to a crowd of hundreds. This vehicle carried a revolution. For 15 years, it transported a dream that powerful forces tried to destroy. The Aurora engine developed by Marcus and Diana Chen represents one of the most significant technological achievements in human history. But more than that, it represents the power of persistence, the strength of love, and the possibility of redemption. She walked to the Mustang and put her hand on the hood, feeling the metal that had been worn by so many California suns. I want to tell you a story about a woman I never met, but who changed my life forever. Her name was Diana Chen, and she believed that technology exists to serve humanity, not to dominate it, not to exploit it, but to lift it up. She believed that the universe doesn't have a scarcity problem. It has a wisdom problem. She believed that waste can become wealth and loss can become gain. Elena's voice broke slightly, but she pushed through. Diana died believing her life's work had been buried. She died thinking that the powerful had won, that innovation could be crushed by greed. But she was wrong. Her work survived. Her dreams survived. And today, millions of people around the world are living better lives because of what she built. She turned back to the crowd. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm not even a supporting character. I'm the villain who learned to be something else. I'm the proof that even the worst version of ourselves doesn't have to be the final version. Diana believed that. Marcus told me so. She believed in second chances. She believed in transformation. She believed in the possibility of redemption. Elena walked back to where Marcus stood with Sophie and Maya, the four of them together, a family built from the ruins of tragedy, from loss transformed into gain, from waste made into wealth. This car taught me what real value looks like. It's not about shine or status or the size of your office. It's about what you build, what you protect, what you're willing to sacrifice to make things right. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, journalists shouted questions. But Elena was looking at Marcus, at Sophie, at Maya, at the family they'd created together, at the proof that broken things could be repaired, that stolen dreams could be reclaimed, that even the deepest wounds could heal if you were brave enough to do the work. After the ceremony, when the crowds had dispersed and the museum had grown quiet, Elena and Marcus stood alone beside the Mustang. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. A key, old and worn, its metal smooth from years of use. This is the original key, the one Diana used to start the engine for the very first time. I've carried it with me every day for 20 years. He held it out to Elena. I want you to have it. Marcus, I can't. Yes, you can. Diana would have wanted this. She believed in passing things forward, not holding them back. This key started a revolution. Now it belongs to the woman who helped finish it. Elena took the key with trembling hands. It was warm from Marcus's pocket, worn smooth by years of hope and grief and persistence. What am I supposed to do with it? Remember, every time you doubt yourself, every time you wonder if you've really changed, hold this key and remember what it started. Remember that the most valuable things in life aren't always visible. Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look past the rust and see the gold underneath. Elena closed her fingers around the key. Outside the museum windows, she could see Sophie and Maya waiting for them, laughing about something only sisters would find funny. She could see the future they were building together, brick by brick, day by day, transformed from the rubble of everything that had been destroyed. Some revolutions start with a bang, others start with a whisper, and some, the ones that matter most, start with a rusted old car in a parking lot, an engine that shouldn't exist, and two people brave enough to believe that even the most broken things can be made to run again. The janitor had his justice. The CEO had her redemption. And the old car that everyone laughed at became the machine that changed the world. Because in the end, every engine, every person, every broken thing has the potential to be reborn. All it takes is someone willing to turn the key.